if you like the idea of your commander suddenly being a flying indestructible 11/11 or swinging in for 19 commander damage after casting only 3 spells, I suggest you keep watching. Hello, I'm Lee, welcome to MTG Specs and to my deck building series House of Middle-earth, where we'll be diving helms deep into the deck building possibilities of commanders from the Lord of the Rings Magic set. My 5-colour deck building series House of WUBRG will be back, but for now we've had to close up because of an infestation of Phyrexian mites. But without further ring-a-dong-dillo, let's pledge allegiance to the King of Gondor and Andor, Aragorn, the Uniter.
Aragorn the Uniter is a 5/5 for 4 that reads, whenever you cast a white spell, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Whenever you cast a blue spell, scry 2. Whenever you cast a red spell, Aragorn the Uniter deals 3 damage to target opponent. And whenever you cast a green spell, target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn.
Clearly Aragorn wants us to cast spells under the no-black ink colour combination, which is named after the ink treader Nephilim, which shares the same colour combination as Aragorn the Uniter. However, the key to success here is to not scramble for all the 4-colour spells we can find to trigger all 4 abilities, because there's only 3 other ink spells. You could load up on a specific 3-colour combination in Magic, but that doesn't necessarily lead to a cohesive strategy, which has never stopped me from building a deck. So all those Naya enthusiasts who want to cast a spell that creates a 1/1 white human soldier creature token, deals 3 damage to an opponent and makes your Fleetfoot Dancer an 8/8, I say all's well that ends better. My thought process immediately with Aragorn was, what is the most impactful 2-colour combination in relation to his effect that can still have impact on the board whilst Aragorn is off brooding somewhere or fighting goblins in the mines of Moria? My top 3 ideas using a 2-colour combination include a Selesnya game plan, creating 1/1 soldiers whenever you cast a white spell that you can then pump by 4/4 with green spells is not too shabby, so loading up with hybrid white-green instant spells will create an unpredictable board to play against. Boros would have been a decent strategy if the damage could target creatures and clear the way for your token army. In that Selesnya game plan, you must include Shield of the Oversoul. It is an absolute bomb. So you're going to get your 1/1 human soldier, your 4/4 pump, and then if Aragorn's on the field, give him +2/+2 permanently and indestructible and flying. Really easy to cast for 1 white or a green. And there's that sudden shift from your 5/5 commander to an 11/11 flying indestructible commander that is super scary for our opponents. A Simic game plan, 1-drop spells, especially that draw cards, stock up on except it's not legendary spells, make multiple Aragorns and keep doing it until you're scrying 10 for 1 blue and 1 green spell is worth +20/+20. However, burn and pump for the win. The main focus will be on Gruul, which has tons of spells that boost stats, gives double strike and have cantrips baked in. We will dip into the other colours, but let me present this magical Christmas land brought to you courtesy of Fire and Forest. Aragorn, cast Manamorphose, adding a green and a red. Aragorn will trigger because Manamorphose is a hybrid Gruul spell, dealing 3 damage to an opponent and boosting Aragorn to a 9/9. And then using the mana to cast a Brute Force and a Giant Growth, together boosting Aragorn by a further 6 to 15/15, and then triggering Aragorn to deal another 3 damage because of his red spell trigger, and Aragorn pumped by a further 4 because of his green spell trigger. Yes, I will take that 6 direct damage to the face, and I am tempted by a commander swinging in for 19. And that's not even the best part of this chaotic list, because I've yet to introduce you to the new fellowship that Aragorn is adventuring with. I've replaced dwarves and elves and hobbits with a kleptomaniac fairy, a rock-eating goblin, and a redemptive angel, to name but a few. Aragorn's colour combination allows us to assemble a fellowship of creatures that positively thrive on targeting single creatures with spells and giving us something so important in a commander deck: redundancy. Relying on your commander is a quest that strays upon the edge of a knife. Hope remains while the company is true. Without Aragorn, we are just firing blanks. With these travelling companions, we make the board unpredictable and we take wins out of nowhere. Zarda Hedron Grinder reads, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only Zarda, copy that spell for each other creature you control. That the spell could target, each copy targets a different one of those creatures. Feather exiles instants or sorceries that target creatures we control and returns them to our hand at the beginning of the next end step. And Ivy, whenever a player casts a spell that targets only a single creature other than Ivy, Gleeful Spell Thief, you may copy that spell. That copy targets Ivy. Think about the interaction here. You cast a spell targeting Zarda, Ivy will copy that spell for herself in response, then be targeted again when Zarda copies the spell for each creature, and then Feather will return the spell to our hand at the beginning of our next end step. Think about that in the context of a 3/3 pump spell or a spell that gives trample. Green decks win all the time by pumping their team with overrun effects. Now throw Aragorn into the mix and those spell triggers pile onto your opponents. Then add in a Mirroring Dragon, triggers when any player targets it, hits all targets that spell's controller controls, plus Mirroring. We Giant Growth the dragon, it Giant Growths all our creatures. If a player targets it with removal, they have to target their creatures with that same removal. Inktreader Nephilim says whenever a player plays an instant or sorcery spell, if Inktreader Nephilim is the only target of that spell, copy the spell for each other creature that spell could target. Each copy targets a different one of those creatures. I like the idea of targeting Ink with an instant that gives Death Touch on another player's turn, so players attacking and blocking each other are suddenly wiping each other out in spectacular Death Touchy fashion. Ink gets Death Touch from a spell, all creatures do. And Radiant Performer does the Ink thing but changes things up from target instant or sorcery to target spell or ability. You could copy an aura like Shield of the Oversoul or one of Aragorn's triggered abilities. As it is said, an avalanche can start with one stone, so let's look at the low casting cost spells that can swiftly bury your opponents in value. We have 20 instants with target a creature as part of their text that boosts our creature in some way, either by increasing power and toughness or giving Death Touch, Trample, Double Strike. You'll also notice that enchantment there, Wild Defiance, pumping creatures who become targets of sorceries and instants by 3, and this works well with all our copying shenanigans. Charge through for 1 green, target creature gains trample, and then you draw a card. Think about copying this with Zarda. We're going to draw ourselves a huge amount of cards and turn our team into a lethal threat. Raking Claws for 1 and a red gives a creature double strike until end of turn, and Embiggen, I love this card. Until end of turn, target creature gains +1/+1 for each super type, card type, and subtype it has. Guy's Gift puts a +1/+1 counter on target creature we control. That remains there, that's not till end of turn. But until end of turn it gains reach, trample, hexproof, and indestructible. Copy that spell, +1/+1 counters for all. Sudden Breakthrough, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn, but also we create a treasure token. Multiply that effect, multiply those treasure tokens. And Sigil Blessing. Until end of turn, target creature you control gets +3/+3, and other creatures you control get +1/+1. Consider this board state. Sigil Blessing is cast targeting Zarda, creating a soldier with Aragorn's white spell trigger. Aragorn targets Ivy with the 4/4 stat increase from the green spell trigger. The soldier entering triggers Seasons of Growth, letting us scry. The targeting of Zarda triggers Seasons of Growth, letting us draw a card. Ivy steals the Sigil Blessing, targeting Zarda, gives herself +3/+3, and then each other creature +1/+1. Zarda's stats will increase from the original casting of Sigil Blessing by 3, and then he'll give every creature +1/+1, and then he copies the spell for everyone else, who all in turn give each other +1/+1s and possibly high fives, and they'll there increase their stats by 3. I'll have to run some numbers on this, but I think if we carry the 1, then add the 3, yep, that adds up to a smackdown of epic proportions. We have an excellent suite of defense cards to keep Aragorn and multiple creatures safe with copying effects, and most importantly, every spell is also offensive with Aragorn's spell triggers on the field. Blossoming Defense and Vines of Vastwood both give a stat boost, but also provide hexproof. And then I discovered this card whilst doing some Scryfall searching. Reknit, it's a hybrid Silencia, so it's going to trigger Aragorn twice and regenerate target permanent or all our permanents if we have the right cards on the field to multiply that spell effect. And our ramp does what a ramp does, keeping us ahead of the curve, but also it's never a waste in this deck with Aragorn on the field. They all have the potential to be late game killers. I love Safe Right Quest. It's finding us a land, but it's hybrid Silencia, so it's creating us a soldier and boosting one of those soldiers or one of our other creatures. Burning Tree Emissary. Burning Tree Emissary has hybrid Gruul. Hybrid Gruul, when it comes into play, it adds Gruul. We've got the potential to trigger Aragorn once, and then maybe a couple more times if we're using that red and green mana to cast other spells. And Trace of Abundance says that it enchants land, the land has Shroud, and whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds 1 mana of any colour to his or her mana pool, in addition to the mana already produced. But the great thing about this spell is it's 3 colours, so it's going to trigger Aragorn's spell triggers 3 times. As well as many cantrip cards that replace those 1 and 2 mana spells, we have card draw support from Path of the Pyromancer. We can discard all cards in our hand, add 1 red for each of those cards discarded, and then draw cards equal to those discarded plus 1. So this means we can refresh our hand and end up with loads of spells that we can cast, loads of red spells that we could cast and trigger Aragorn. Seasons of Growth, fantastic card in this deck. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, we scry 1, and it doesn't say non-token, so it can be those soldiers we're creating with white spell triggers. And whenever we cast a spell that targets a creature we control, we draw a card. That is our main game plan. Now, I don't know if you've ever been on the receiving end of a Hunter's Prowess. Until end of turn, target creature gets +3/+3 and gains trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw that many cards. Think about copying this with Zarda and the amount of cards we could draw. And Neheb is here as a backup. Path of the Pyromancer doing exactly the same thing, but on a 5/4 trampling body. I couldn't resist the madness of copying Aragorn, Zarda, or one of our new Fellowship. Think about this example. We can use our powerful buffs to make Zarda and the rest of the attacking creatures suddenly very, very terrifying. Then we receive another Zarda if Vesuvian Duplomancy is on the field. This one is non-legendary, and this can be done repeatedly to make infuriatingly powerful creatures, or 2 Aragorns. That means each green spell would then add +8/+8, or dealing 6 damage to an opponent with the red spell trigger. Irenicus' Vile Duplication is in this list, and it's in most of my decks with blue. I like having a non-legendary copy of my commander. And then we've got 2 more cards that say no, no, no to the legendary rule, Sakashima of 1,000 Faces, and Spark Double. And when those instants and sorceries have gone to the graveyard, we have ways to recast them. Dreadhorde will be able to recur all of our sorceries because his power will usually be high from Aragorn pointing his green buff at him, or just from one of our green buff spells. Mavinda can lend a wing to do the same, as we aren't interested in targeting our opponent's creatures, and Narset makes our creatures even more threatening with prowess. Non-creature spells are central to our plan, and we can cast them several times during our turns. But not only that, we can cast non-creature, non-land cards with mana value less than Narset's power from a graveyard and copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. And with our removal, we are still targeting our own creatures with fight spells, giving us the possibility to copy these spells for mass removal, backed up from boosts from our instants and Aragorn's triggers. Examples include Pit Fight. It's a Gruul hybrid spell. Target creature you control fights another target creature, and that creature that you targeted to fight another creature, you can boost that with Aragorn's ability to give it +4/+4. Arnie Slays the Troll. It's a saga. It's not an instant or a sorcery, but it does everything we want in this deck. Chapter 1 lets us fight up to 1 target creature we don't control. Chapter 2 makes a creature bigger and adds red mana so we can continue casting spells. And Chapter 3 allows us to gain life equal to the greatest power among creatures we control. And if you think back to earlier in this deck tech, we can have very, very, very large creatures, so it's nice to have a huge life swing as a backup. We have to have redundancy in our decks, and the Howling Abomination nicely rounds off this weirdly twisted Fellowship. There are so many ways you can build Aragorn the Uniter. You could lean into a Storm build, just chaining rituals and cantrips and wheels together and get your Storm count up and then Aetherflux somebody, or you could stick loads of ultimatums and rituals in the deck, just like my Omnath Locus of All brew. That was one of the suggestions in that video. Have a look at that video. In fact, Aragorn is a powerful include in the 99 of most 5-colour decks that are leaning into a multicolour spell theme. Joda the Unifier, meet Aragorn the Uniter. I'm sure you'll be very happy together. Thank you for watching this episode of House of Middle-earth and the continued war on my bank account from Wizards. If you enjoyed this humble free content, a like and subscribe would mean the world to me. Anyhow, thank you for spending your time with me today, and I look forward to seeing you next time on MTG Specs.